Quinlan is here to look back on a pretty interesting weekend of rugby. JJ Hanrahan is the man.
Yeah, it was a good weekend for the Irish provinces, and I was negative towards Ulster at the weekend, and they got a great win. I just didn't look. I thought it was going to be difficult for them to go over there, and they were fantastic. Yeah, JJ Hanrahan, going back to what you just said, it was obviously it's a little bit trickier when you're called into the team late, and in what was a scrappy kind of disjointed performance, he played well, kicked really well, looked composed, got a good try, and I think overall there'll be kind of a lingering disappointment of not getting the bonus point. 6-day turnaround now to go to Castres, and then Gloucester had beaten Exeter on Saturday in that group, which makes it a bit trickier for them. But look, you've got to try and get an away win at some stage. So it's either Castres or Gloucester if they want to get out of the group. They'll both be difficult matches. But I was pleased for JJ Hanrahan, to be fair. I think, he's...
This was the performance that we knew he was capable of but had never seen, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't like as if it was a free-flowing game where there was loads of line breaks and Munster were brilliant and the backline were brilliant. I just thought he looked very composed, kicked well, and was in the end of finished off a try in the second half. So it was good for him, good for his confidence as well, that he played well and looked composed. And
still we wait for that full first choice Munster backline to get its run out, where you've got the 9-10 partnership, Farrell's back, and then all of a sudden 10's gone, Farrell's gone.
Munster would have obviously known for a couple of days that Joey Carberry was maybe struggling a little bit, so I don't think they would have been as disrupted, and JJ Hanrahan probably would have ran the captain's run on Saturday that they would have had, and maybe trained trained during the week with him as well. So Chris Farrell kind of coming out. I know Sammy Arnold has played there a lot, so it's just not ideal before the game. I think everyone was hopeful of seeing that Carberry-Murray axis, and very excited about Farrell being back as well. So there was mitigating factors to maybe not getting the bonus point and it being a bit scrappy. When the weather conditions weren't great, Cass came with a pretty negative approach, I thought. They kicked a lot, they tried to disrupt Munster, and they didn't try and play a lot of rugby themselves. Now, traditionally they're not that type of side anyway. They're very structured, and they have a strong set piece and stuff, but they tried to frustrate the life out of Munster, and maybe Munster a little bit guilty of not being clinical themselves and maybe allowing Cass to do that. There was probably I can only remember once or twice in the game where there was a bit of a spark to the proceedings, and but it'll be spicy next week. There was a lot of off the ball stuff, a lot of verbals, and there's probably a little bit more pressure now when you play at home, that there's an expectation that it's going to be a bonus point win when you're playing a French team for any of the Irish provinces. So it was a bit scrappy yesterday, and they'll probably regret it a little bit, but either way I think they've got to go to France anyway and get a result, so it may not matter in the end.
Yeah.
Could you accuse Munster of a lack of ruthlessness over the last couple of games? Because there's always just been that extra inch left wanting at the end. You talk about Gloucester not seeing that game out in the way they should have seen it. Very big shout that they should have won in Sandy Park, and very good shout they could have got a bonus point yesterday. Is that too harsh a take?
I wouldn't say lack of ruthlessness, I'd say lack of accuracy, which would be a concern, because you hope that stuff gets better as the weeks go on. And they've looked very good in the Pro 14, and some really positive results. They haven't lost since the Leinster game. So that's 7 games with one without a loss. Put in that draw against Exeter, so they haven't been beaten in 7. 11 European games at home, they're starting to build a bit of a fortress there again, that they're not losing there in the European Cup. But I think the accuracy is probably the issue. You look at some of the stuff in the first half where uncharacteristically Tadhg Beirne knocks on the ball coming around off the side of a breakdown, and another time it hits his shoulder as well, and there was a few timing issues, and it's a pity because the opportunities were there and they got into good positions, and they started the game really well. They started with a real intent and an intensity which was impressive, but just lacking in that little bit of execution and accuracy. So I'd say more accuracy than ruthlessness, because the effort level is phenomenal, and Kilcoyne and John Ryan have to play 73, 74 minutes, the props, because, and I'm being respectful to Lockman and Parker, they're a little bit inexperienced. There's no James Cronin and Archer there, and Castres brought on a really powerful front row in 50 minutes, and so they had to put in a hard shift. And but Munster they were much better in the second half, I think. And Tadhg had a few great turnovers. Clote was good, and he hadn't been playing well in a while. I think he was very, very impressive. He went off with a HIA in 64 minutes. So you can kind of dissect it in a number of different ways. The mitigating factors are the weather, the disruptions with the changes, and Castres being quite negative and trying to stop Munster from playing rather than playing themselves.
I mean, I would expect them to win next week, right?
I'd be confident that they're good enough to go there and win. They have to be a little bit more accurate, because you're not going to... When you go to France, opportunities, they don't come too regularly unless you're really dominant, and sometimes it's happened before. Munster have been to Castres before and won really well. They got the draw last year there, and when you get a draw in France or get any sort of a result, sometimes a losing bonus point in France is very good. But they're capable of beating Castres next week. But it'll be different type of energy. There'll be different type of aggression to this, and Munster have to be better, a lot better and more clinical.
I would also, so there's the table there. You can see they've got 11 points, and their last game is Exeter at home. Exeter will be out of the competition by that point, so you would expect that that'll be a 5-point win for them in the end of January. So that's putting them on to 11-5 is 16, and then a 4-point win next week.
But if Gloucester win and beat Exeter at home this week,
Gloucester still have a chance.
And Munster were to lose, they're kind of surging ahead of them there. They can go a couple of points ahead, and then they play.
So they just have to win.
They play that game in round 5,
yeah.
And if Gloucester, just hypothetically, if Gloucester were to beat them at home, then it just makes it harder for them. So I think they have to win this game. I think to top the group.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Exeter go to Gloucester at the weekend and a Friday night and beat Gloucester there. There's something kind of wrong with their setup at the moment. And
that'd be great.
Gloucester expose some vulnerabilities. It'd be a great result if Exeter go and beat Gloucester in Kingsholm. Now Gloucester were very good in that game on Saturday, so it's tricky now. But I think they'll be confident. The 6-day turnaround this week is always harder, and they'll have to, preparation and stuff will be a bit lighter this week, and you'd be hopeful that Farrell and Carberry can come back in and be involved.
Yeah, the reason we're obsessing about the try bonus point is because they need a home quarter-final, and then, you hope whatever happens after that.
Yeah, I think it does make a difference in the end. But look, at the end of the day, I think if they don't win this week, they've got to come away with 1 point at least, and then they've got to win in Gloucester. You have to get at least one away win. I think the 2 points they got in Exeter will help them in the end, but you've got to get 3 home wins and an away win, and that puts you in a position of getting out of the group.
Yeah.
Getting that elusive home quarter-final is massive, because you think if Munster get a home quarter-final, it'll be very difficult for any team to go there and win a quarter-final. So you're thinking there's a chance of being straight into a semi-final, and I think they'll probably be better this year if they get to a semi-final.
Much better.
Now, there's no guarantees. Look, at the end of the day, they could lose both these next 2 games. It is difficult, no matter who you're playing, to go away in Europe. But I think they're certainly good enough, and they have the players, but I think they're going to have to be a lot more clinical and accurate with the ball. When you get into the opposition 22, that's what they were renowned for over... Munster were always renowned for that pressure and sustaining pressure and just asking continuous questions. It mightn't be wing-to-wing stuff, but they're so physical and intense that teams just wear down, and they eventually get over the line, or they kick 3 points over the bar, and they have the ability to come back there again. And just when they got into the Castres 22 yesterday, particularly in that first half, unforced error, it wasn't as if Castres were defending brilliantly. It was just their own doing, and a couple of line-outs as well.
Just one question on that pool on Exeter. Like, you go back 3 years ago and you look at how the Irish provinces performed in the Champions Cup, and it was very poor, and they got savaged in the media, really. And it feels that this Exeter team might not suffer the same fate. I guess the English press don't react with their teams as much because they don't feel like national representatives as much as the Irish provinces do. But there's a real sense that this Exeter team have really bottled it in Europe over the last few years. Like, why is it? Because they're definitely better than the performances they've shown.
Very, very surprising. And when you consider how tough they are at home in the Premiership, winning the Premiership 2 years ago and blowing teams away, I expected them to. They beat Gloucester 2 weeks ago in the league, 23-6, blew them away, and maybe for a 10-minute period on Saturday they looked like doing that. And then Gloucester are very impressive, to be fair, and Gloucester are missing a lot of players. That's why I think that round 5 game is going to be a lot more difficult. They'll have Franco Mostert, the South African. He came off the bench last week against Worcester, and he's just kind of joined the club and been integrated. They'll have Ruan Ackerman possibly back, Ruan Dreyer. You loved all the South Africans. They have a lot of South Africans there with Ackerman being the coach. And there was a guy played in the wing from Ollie Torley the weekend, former English under-20 player. He's only 21. Outstanding. He was phenomenal. So they have a lot of good players. And Exeter, surprisingly, I was kind of expecting an onslaught of blowing Gloucester away at the weekend, and they didn't do that. And maybe, they showed it again against Munster. Maybe they're not as good as people are making them out to be, but they're still capable of going to Gloucester on Friday night and getting a result. But they probably don't get enough. We'll see now what happens. I listened to Lawrence Delalio yesterday, and he's just the English teams, he was saying, are a bit like Brexit. They're going out of Europe. Wasps were really poor against Toulouse at home, and Exeter. When you lose at home in Europe, the chances of getting out of the group are very, very slim. Yeah,
we could have done what Wasps doing Leinster a favour. Leinster's still a little bit behind the 8 ball in that group as a result of losing in Toulouse. And they weren't particularly impressive in the game against Bath.
You know what, it was understandable as well, because any team that Leinster play now are going to raise their intensity levels, or their energy levels are going to be going through the roof, because if not, it's natural. And when the champions come to town, you think you're going to raise your game. So they brought a level of kind of aggression that maybe troubled Leinster at times. They started the game really well, getting that 7-point, that try, and they had a fair bit of sustained pressure. So Leinster had to defend and really man up. But then there's just this little air of inevitability that even when they get a sucker punch, that they're going to respond themselves. And I know the Jordan Larmour try is very fortuitous, and the Bath out half Wilson just gives, I don't know what, he obviously thought they were going back for the crooked throw on the line out.
Yeah. Why didn't they?
But Matthew Renal didn't. He said advantage was over.
Right.
I don't think there was any advantage. It was so quick, and I think it was quite unfair.
Down, so I didn't.
Yeah, it was quite unfair.
So if
I couldn't even hear. Did he say it?
I don't know.
Just play on.
If anybody didn't see this, Cronin throws in, and it's like it leaks off to the right. Like it's not a slightly dodgy one.
Kind of goes over the back. The Bath scrum half gathers it.
It's a floater.
They play off it.
Bath win it behind the Leinster line when it should really have been a scrum or they get the line out.
And you just think this, it's like a training ground thing where everyone merely has stopped and your man just hoofs this 20-yard pass, and
Jordan Larmour's awake.
Just gone like a bullet, and that killed the game completely, because it was kind of hanging in the balance. They were matching them, like they really frustrated Leinster. I think Sam Underhill was outstanding, and Francois Lowe. I think they got 7 turnovers in the game, which is a huge number. But Francois Lowe keeps doing that. He does that at any team he plays against. He's brilliant. And Sam Underhill, who was superb for England in November, very, very good as well. But a little concern there for Leinster, that maybe they were mentally just a small little bit off it.
Yeah.
And I said this, Ger, I think when you bring a surge of all your internationals back in like that, it doesn't just happen. You've got to make it happen.
And the other thing is that there's like the first ever that I can remember tiny bits of criticism of Dan Levy. They're like, oh, well, he's not an 8. He just can't play 8. I'm like, well,
I think it's easy.
Give him a chance.
It's easy to go there and go, well, he's not a number 8, and it makes a huge difference. I think he can definitely play there.
Let's have a bigger sample size here before we go. This guy who's absolutely amazing at everything he's ever done up to this point. Well, maybe he just takes a little bit of getting used to in the European Cup, in the Heineken Cup, to go and play 8 for the first time.
Like, why are people saying that? Like, what did you see on Saturday in particular that
I'm not really sure I saw anything that was negative. I think Leinster as a whole were under massive pressure all the time. Look, I think natural number 8s tend to have that ability to get off the scrum, and they're so used to the angles they run. They're covering lines across the field. Sometimes they're kind of tucked in behind the defensive line. They certainly probably get the ball in their hands a little bit more. As a 6 or 7, you're kind of tending to be, closer to the breakdown. I don't think there's a huge difference in 6, 7, 8 nowadays for modern rugby. Traditionally, you want your big ball carrying number 8. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. Dan Levy's so abrasive, and I think he just covers so much ground around the field, and he's so active all the time that maybe you want a number 8 to be a bit more of a reader of the game and pick his moments to make good carries and stuff like that. The biggest one is kind of off the scrum, having that control at the base and knowing when to say I want to pick and when to leave it to the scrum half and stuff like that. So I just think it was a collective thing that they were under so much pressure, and it's kind of easy to go to the balance of the back row. I think the balance in the back row for me is, your tall Ranger number 6, who's probably a little bit of a hard edge and a bit more aggressive. Probably needs to be a good ball carrier as well. And then the 8 is probably a little bit more silky skills. And then your 7 obviously is the one who's sticking his head into the bottom of every breakdown and harassing the opposition halfbacks. But
I was thinking about this. Is there any coincidence that the 3 7s that Leinster have, that Ireland have, get injured a lot? Because you are asked to pummel the opposition like early and often. They're always the ones with like 25 tackles and like ridiculous amounts of rucks hit. That's going to lead to your body breaking down.
Yeah, part of the way Leinster play it, I don't know if it's a Leinster thing. I think it's the nature of the individual as well, that you're so competitive.
And the position though as well.
Yeah, position, yeah. You're obviously, as a 7, you're going to be involved in a fair few collisions. You're going to continuously be thereabouts at breakdowns. You're going to be making a lot of tackles. So yeah, there's a higher risk probably than maybe a winger who's standing out in the wing and maybe doesn't have the same number of involvements.
But even a 6?
Yeah, 6 probably doesn't have the same number of involvements, because sometimes the 6 off scrums might hang back defensively, and the play might go to this side of the field and he might stay here and not track across the field. So 6 and 8 maybe sometimes are positional play, and they're tracking across the field rather than chasing towards the ball all the time. But you want your 7, he's like over and back a huge number of times, and he's probably that first collision or first phase that he's usually involved in. If he's not making a tackle, he's usually kind of entering the ruck. So there's probably a lot more involvements. Yeah.
Is there any point where you start asking your 7s to change their game a little bit, or is that just the nature of it? So you have to expect that, like, you actually need 3 7s who are all really good, because they are all going to be injured at various stages of the season.
You wouldn't want to change someone, change the type of approach, because that natural aggression that is not in everybody, or that competitiveness. If you look at Sam Underhill, and he's your natural, in-your-face 7 as well, who played for Bath at the weekend. He was really good for England, and he's kind of gone a roundabout way to play international rugby through Ospreys, Gloucester, now Bath. Like at one stage, there was a high ball kicked up, and he just kamikazely dives through the air over James Lowe, comes down, hurts his leg, massive impact off the ground. Do you want to say to Sam Underhill, well, look, don't drive through the air there as much, because you might get injured?
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't really. You just kind of have to let him off. And Van der Fleer's the same. All action. Levy's so aggressive, so abrasive. Sean O'Brien the same. You can't tell any of these guys to hang off a bit. You can tell them be a bit smarter with maybe some of the contexts that are possibly, there's no point in entering the ruck or being involved in, because
I guess that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
maybe a little bit, being a little bit smarter. And listen, you get that, Jared, the older you get. Sometimes, I experience it myself, you're just very unlucky. Sean O'Brien has been incredibly unlucky with a lot of injuries over the years. Cian Healy had a lot of bad luck for a long time, if you remember, and he's getting a kind of a clear run now. Sometimes it's down to the conditioning you do with your body, but sometimes it's down to a bit of luck as well, and how you manage the game. You don't want to take the edge off the player, though, in any sense.
But we've got to go. But on Friday, you were talking about the young loose head at Ulster who played the whole game, was really good.
Yeah, he was good, and he delivered the other night. And I looked at one of the websites this morning. He was on European team of the weekend,
Right.
Eric O'Sullivan. So that's a good boost for him to bring someone up from the academy like that, and for him to perform.
Hit a full 80.
Yeah, he did, yeah. And Rory Best was good, in fairness. They fronted up Ulster, and I think to have a young lad in a pack like that to get an away win is massive for him.
Also, not like there was always constituent parts there over the last couple of seasons, and for various reasons, it constantly fell apart. But there's the bones of a really good team there.
Yeah, and like I said, when you look at the team on Friday, when I looked at the team Friday morning, I thought, yeah, I like the look of that team. There's a bit of an edge to it. There's a lot of good players in there, and the key for them is playing together and being a unit, and that's what they did the other night. And to get some of these away win like that will do them the world of good. It'll build a bit of spirit. It's grand, beating Edinburgh or somebody at home with a late-minute penalty like they did at the start of the season when they got a couple of late penalties to win the first 2 Pro 14 games, and they're kind of jumping around the place. I'm not sure that's something to be getting excited about. You should be a bit more dominant at home if you want to be a top team. But it's amazing what the away wins can do for you, even if they're only scrappy. And sometimes you can say, well, we didn't deserve that, but it's amazing what it can do from team spirit. And that's exactly what Ulster need, given what's happened in the last couple of years with all the changes and the stuff that's gone on there. So a win like that will do them the world of good. And it's given them a great opportunity if they can. But they have to back it up now this week at home to Scarlets.
Yeah.
And that's the key for them.
Yeah, and Scarlets are no slouches either. Alan, good stuff. We'll preview those weekend's games a little bit later on in the week as well.